In this video, I'm going to show you how to survive 8 deadly threats to thru-hikers. These tips can save your life. As a long-distance hiker and former Army combat medic, I wanted to create a video that could actually prevent deaths out there on the PCT, AT, CDT, or any thru-hike. By the end of this video, you are going to know how to survive 8 seriously life-threatening challenges that you very well could experience on your thru-hike. Let's get into it. Number 1, dehydration. As you hike through hundreds of miles of desert on the PCT, CDT, Arizona Trail, etc., your greatest risk of death is without a doubt dehydration. Even on wetter thru-hikes like the AT, dehydration can still be a major threat. On a dry year, your water points can be very few and far between. One thing you can and should do is every time you fill up your water bottles, drink at least 1 liter of water. If you have a long water carry ahead of you on a brutally hot day, go ahead, take a break, drink maybe even 2 liters along with some snacks, maybe a meal. That way you leave the water point with every bottle completely filled up, but you don't need to drink any of it for a while because you're super hydrated. Make sure to conserve your water to make it last between water points, but be careful not to over-conserve your water. Sometimes people will be so afraid that they'll run out of water that they leave plenty of water in their bottles even though they really need it just in case, when in reality they desperately need to just drink it. Most people who die of dehydration in the desert actually still have water left in their bottle. So even as they're lying on the ground dying, they're still trying to conserve their water instead of drinking it. So when you're out there and you're trying to make it to the next water point, remember that water does 0 good outside of you. It has to get in you to do anything. So let me ask you a question. If you have 5 miles left until your next water point, and you have 3 sips left in your bottle, what do? What would you do? Would you drink the last 3 sips and hope that it gets you to the next water point? Or would you not drink it and just let it sit there and conserve it? If you said you drink it all, you answered correctly, and you hypothetically made it to the next water point. If you said that you would conserve it, you didn't make it to the hypothetical water point, and you now require a medical team to airlift you off of the trail because you're having a hypothetical heat stroke. It is way better to drink those last 3 sips when you really need them so your body can actually use it, rather than waiting until you're lying on the ground having a heat stroke, at which point it is too late for the last 3 sips to do anything. And if it gets to that point, you seriously need medical attention, so make sure you do call for it. If you already feel a little dehydrated and you have no water, you must do that which no hiker wants to do: ask another hiker for water. No one wants to have to ask another hiker such an annoying question, because after all, they need water too, right? Yes, but they can always say no. And if you ran out of water, chances are they're managing their water better than you are, so they might actually be able to spare a little, so it wouldn't hurt to ask, especially if your life is in danger. Another thing you can do to help your body save water is you can hike with a reflective umbrella. A lot of people do this while hiking through the desert. It allows you to hike all day in the shade, even in the most exposed areas. It will keep you much cooler, and it will decrease your body's need to keep producing sweat, which is constantly dehydrating you. Number 2, hyponatremia. Unfortunately, just drinking tons of water is not enough. As you sweat out all of your water, you're also sweating out all of the sodium or salt that's in your body. This can not only make you sick, but it can actually kill you. It is critically important to have an adequate amount of sodium in your body, so make sure you are eating plenty of salty foods. And if you are prone to hyponatremia, dehydration, or any type of heat illness, bring a packet or several packets of oral rehydration salts, just in case. I'll be posting links below to that and everything else that I talk about in this video. So if you're well hydrated, like you drank a ton of water, you're not thirsty, but you feel nauseous, confused, fatigued, or you experience muscle spasms or cramps, make sure you consume plenty of salt and don't hesitate to call for help if you need it. Number 3, falls. Thru-hikes tend to have an abundance of opportunities where one could easily fall to one's death. Even though it is very rare for this to happen, it is still an ever-present possibility on mountainous thru hikes. Here are some things that you can do to mitigate that risk. Number 1, hike with trekking poles. My trekking poles have saved me from devastating falls countless times. Wind, snow, and even just rocky terrain are all factors that can contribute to a fall. Using trekking poles can instantly give you the ability to steady yourself if you start to trip, and it can help to just keep you stable so you have less falls overall. They also help to take the stress off of your legs and distribute the workload to all 4 limbs. Number 2, traction. Whatever terrain you happen to be in, make sure your feet have adequate traction to handle it. Whether it's boots, trail runners, or even hiking sandals, yes, people thru hike in those. Your footwear should have dependable traction that can prevent unnecessary slips. When I was in the PCT, I allowed my boots to become extremely bald on the sole without replacing them. It didn't seem to matter until I slipped on a super steep slab of granite. Fortunately, my arms grabbed the nearest ledge before I could even process what was going on. And I dangled there by my hands over a bad 30-foot drop. Even a bad 20-foot drop can kill you if you're unlucky. Eventually, I was able to swing my legs over to the nearest foothold where I was able to pull myself up. Now, I happened to get lucky in that instance, but I could have just as easily been severely injured or even killed, just because I didn't have adequate traction on my boots. That's stupid. So make sure to check your footwear every time you get into town to make sure you have good traction still, and if not, replace it as soon as possible. When you're hiking in ice and snow, make sure you have the right gear to give you traction, like Microspikes or crampons. Microspikes were enough for me in the high Sierras, but everyone has their own preference for different reasons. The added traction from Microspikes or crampons also helps you go much faster across slick, icy terrain instead of just slipping and sliding and struggling all around just to walk. If you are hiking through icy or snowy terrain, make sure you have an ice axe and take the time to learn how to properly use it and practice it in a safe setting, because it can really save your life if you do have a fall down an icy slope. Number 4, getting lost. One of the most frustrating things a hiker can experience on trail is getting lost, and it can happen for a variety of different reasons. Here are some things you can do to avoid getting lost. Number 1, frequently check your navigation to make sure you're on the right path. All thru-hike trails intersect with other local trails countless times. Sometimes the path can be a bit confusing, and if you take the wrong turn, you can find yourself miles off track on some random trail. Anytime that you pass through any sort of trail intersection, check your navigation to make sure you are on the right path. I use the Guthook app for navigation on the PCT because it shows me exactly where I am and exactly where the trail is, without requiring phone service or internet. But there are many options for navigation and devices for it. Number 2, backup navigation. Every seasoned hiker has heard this phrase or some rendition of it. Make sure you bring paper maps, just in case. This isn't bad advice for someone with solid land navigation skills in their wheelhouse. But most thru-hikers don't know how to shoot an azimuth, don't know how to read contour lines, or how to adjust for magnetic north and all that. That's why it's important to either learn navigation skills and carry paper maps, or at least carry a backup navigation device instead. When I was on the PCT, I carried 2 smartphones, both with the Guthook app on them. Now I carry a Garmin Inreach Explorer Plus as a backup navigation along with my smartphone. Make sure to take extra precaution to keep your devices dry and safe from the elements. Number 3, emergency plan. So what happens if you do discover that you're completely lost? You have no bearing of where you are and your navigation has failed. Or maybe you're off trail, injured, and unable to walk. What do? Well, aside from doing your best to get back to the trail and survive, if you simply cannot find your way back, your next move should be to summon the help of a rescue team. There are many different SOS devices available that can call for help in remote areas via satellite communication. This is another reason that I carry the Garmin Inreach Explorer, because in addition to having navigation, it also has a built-in SOS device that I can use to call for help if I ever need it, from just about anywhere in the world. Some devices are cheaper than others, some are lighter than others, so do your research and get whichever SOS device is best for what you want and need. There is an infinite number of things that could go wrong at any time, so you absolutely should have an SOS device. Some brands have the option to purchase insurance coverage, which will cover the cost of you being rescued if you ever need it. And that price can be pretty steep, so I highly recommend getting the insurance. Some areas don't charge for search and rescue services, but it's best to just be as prepared as possible. Number 5, water crossings. One of the most dangerous parts of through hiking are swift water crossings. Some creeks and rivers are so fast, powerful, and rocky that it can literally be a death sentence to get swept up by the current and get sucked downriver. Some water crossings appear to have little consequence if you float downstream, but steep waterfalls and brutal rapids often lie just around the bend. On my 2017 PCT hike, there were 2 thru-hikers that were tragically killed by treacherous water crossings in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Here are some tips that can save your life when facing dangerous water crossings. 1. If the creek or river is being fed by snowmelt, cross it early in the morning. At night, the snow and ice layers refreeze. But when the sun comes up, the snow melts more and more throughout the day, causing the volume of water to increase until the refreezing cycle starts over again at night. So your best bet is to cross early in the morning before that day's snow melt accumulates in the river. Number 2, cross at the widest point. The part of the creek or river that is the widest is also the shallowest. The deeper the water is, the stronger the force it has to pull you downstream. If 2 creeks or tributaries join into one, cross upstream while they're separate because there will be less volume of water in those 2 channels. If you don't see a safe spot to cross, continue traveling upstream because the further upstream you go, the less volume of water is in the river. Look for fallen trees or other natural bridges that go across the water to cross over. Just make sure it is strong enough to hold your weight. If it's wet and slippery, you can throw some sand on it for added traction. Number 3, wade through the water instead of hopping from rock to rock. Rocks in the water can be extremely slippery, and jumping from rock to rock can be very dangerous, as well as increasing your chances of slipping and falling into a swift current. Do not go barefoot when wading across because sharp rocks often line the riverbed, which can cause a knee-jerk reaction when stepped on and possibly cause you to lose your balance. Another reason you shouldn't go barefoot is that you should have as much traction as possible when wading across the wet, slippery rocks at the bottom of the creek. Number 4, use your trekking poles for balance and to test out the depth of areas where you can't see how deep it is. Some water crossings are so powerful that they require every bit of your strength just to not fall. It helps significantly to have 4 points of contact as opposed to only your 2 feet. Don't put your weight on your trekking pole until it is securely placed in a dependable position. If you aren't using trekking poles, find a good walking stick to help you across. Number 5, don't lift your legs as you wade across. Drag them. Lifting your legs in swift water leaves you susceptible to lose balance and get knocked over by the force of the water. Face the current head on and cross diagonally for maximum balance against the force of the water. A creek that comes up to your knees can be enough to push you over if the force is strong enough. If the water comes up to your waist, do not attempt to cross there. Don't. Go somewhere else. Go on. Go upstream. Look for something else. Don't do it. Turn around if you have to. Number 6, make sure your backpack is lightly attached to you so you can easily drop it if you fall in. If you happen to fall in, immediately release your pack and keep yourself belly up with your feet downstream. That way you can push off against rocks, logs, and obstacles as needed. Try to steer yourself towards the shore and immediately dry yourself off and get warm when you exit the water. Start a fire to warm yourself if needed to avoid hypothermia from the super cold mountain water. Number 7, if you don't feel confident to cross and you're on a well-populated through hike like the PCT, wait for other hikers to show up so you can observe exactly how they cross and you can help each other if needed. If you are alone on a sparsely populated through hike like the CDT and you don't feel confident to cross after exhausting all possible options, what you need to do is check your ego and turn around. It is much better to bypass that section than to die crossing a river that you know you shouldn't attempt. So turn around go around, just don't try it if you know you shouldn't try it. Number 6, hypothermia. Hypothermia is when your body temperature drops below normal. If not addressed, it can kill you. Being wet can drastically multiply the effect that the cold has on your body. If you are wet and cold, remove all wet clothing and dry off as soon as possible. It is better to be dry and naked than covered in wet clothes in the cold. Change into dry clothes if possible. If you don't have dry clothes, start a fire ASAP to warm you up and dry you off. If you are unable to start a fire, run in place, do push-ups, or do any exercise that you can think of to help warm you up. If you're with a friend, use their sleeping bag to warm you up after drying off. If they're currently using it, hop in there with them. If you're sharing a sleeping bag with a friend to combat hypothermia, you will receive more heat from their body if they remove their clothing as well. Oh yeah. Hang your wet clothes to dry or have your friend do it for you. Next, boil water or have your friend boil water in order to help heat you up from the inside. Make whatever you want with the water, hot chocolate, tea, oatmeal, it doesn't matter. Just make sure to consume something nice and hot. If you do not have the means to get warm and stay warm, consider calling for help. Number 7, wildlife and creeps. Whether it's a bear, a cougar, or an ill-intentioned human, these beings can pose a serious threat to your safety in certain situations, and you should possess the means to defend yourself. Due to strict and complicated laws regarding guns, it is not realistic to bring a firearm on a thru hike for self-defense. The next best option, in my opinion, is pepper spray. You've probably heard of bear mace, which is simply your standard pepper spray, but in a large canister meant for a bear. But if you don't want to carry such a large can of pepper spray, you can buy smaller pocket-sized canisters of pepper spray to carry with you. There are many different types of pepper spray, so you want to get one that can spray with enough distance to keep an animal or human at bay, without them coming danger close. Pepper spray is also a huge advantage against human attackers, and is legally considered to be a very low use of force in comparison to using a knife or a firearm. In other words, you can't just stab or shoot someone, even if they punch you in the face, kick you in the balls, or piss in your Cheerios. So it is very practical to have a non-lethal form of self-defense against humans, especially if you have to stealth camp near urban areas or if you are a female through hiking alone. Unfortunately, creeps exist, even on through hikes. As a matter of fact, in 2018, an older female PCT hiker was allegedly held captive by a delinquent hiker that she met on the PCT. According to her, he threatened her to keep her around him, and he told everyone they met that they were husband and wife to subdue suspicion. The woman's family became extremely worried about her when she uncharacteristically dropped off the face of the earth and stopped communicating with them entirely. Eventually, the woman managed to get away from this psychopath and was able to get back into contact with her family. But to me, this story really highlights the need for self-defense capabilities. Now, when it comes to animals, if the pepper spray is ineffective, or if you didn't bring any, you should absolutely have a knife in case you are attacked. Now, I don't want to see a bear or a mountain lion be killed any more than anyone else does. I freaking love animals, and those two are some of my favorite animals in this country. But if they are attacking you, if they are trying to kill you, you should do whatever it takes to survive. Shh. What?
No, nothing. Never mind.
Okay. Can I finish?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. If you carry a knife for...
It's just that's not gonna happen, dude. You're not gonna get attacked by a bear or a mountain lion. Too rare. Come on.
Yeah, I know it's rare. I'm talking about what to do in the off chance that it does happen. I don't think it's good to be completely defenseless out there in the wilderness. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I think it's just you.
Do you want to sit here and do this? Yeah, do you?
Sorry.
If you carry a knife for self-defense against wildlife, a cute little 2-inch Swiss Army blade is not going to cut it. You simply aren't going to be able to pierce a bear's thick coat and do visceral damage with a little Boy Scout blade. Your blade should be long enough to pierce the coat and sever the arteries and organs underneath it. Now, obviously, this is the absolute worst case scenario, and you should do everything in your power to avoid the situation. But it is much better to have a fighting chance than to simply roll over and die because you didn't have a plan for such a situation. I'll be making a video in the future about how to avoid interactions with bears completely, but it's important to be prepared just in case you do get attacked. It's possible. Survival is not guaranteed in such an altercation with a bear or a cougar, but I would rather die fighting than die running. Number 8, water contamination and bad food. If you get dangerously sick out on the trail, the most likely reasons are either the water you drank or the food you ate. It's incredibly important to take water treatment very seriously, and it's best to assume that all water that you come across on the trail is contaminated to some degree. After all, with so many animals living out there, you can't seriously tell me that there is a single creek, river, or stream that hasn't been pooped in, puked on, or peed in by some type of animal.
Ew. Disgusting.
Really? Are we still doing this?
No, sorry. It's gross. That's all. Gross. I'm done. It's all you. Take it away. Star of the show. Camera hog. Camera hog.
Anyway, it isn't only the exposed water channels that can be contaminated. Even spring water can carry Giardia and other pathogens. Yes, hikers have gotten sick from spring water. There are many options available to treat water. There are water filters, iodine drops, chlorine tabs, bleach, UV light purification, etc. I personally use the Sawyer Squeeze water filter, which is pretty much the standard for most thru-hikers. I chose this filter because of its ease and simplicity. I don't have to wait to purify the water. I don't have to worry about breaking a UV bulb. I just fill up my water bottle, screw on the Sawyer, and drink up. The Sawyer Squeeze filters out 99.99% of bacteria and protozoa, but not viruses, chemicals, heavy metals, or pesticides. So that's good to know if you're drinking really bad water. The Sawyer S2 does filter out viruses, chemicals, pesticides, bacteria, heavy metals, and protozoa, but I haven't picked one up yet, so if you have a Sawyer S2, please let me know in the comments what you think about it. Even though the Sawyer Squeeze doesn't filter as much as the S2, I never got sick from drinking through it, and most hikers do perfectly well with the Sawyer Squeeze. If I had to recommend against a particular filter, I would say do not get the Sawyer Mini. It's horrible, just don't. The flow rate is painfully slow, and it gets slower by the day, and you will soon find yourself drinking water by the drop. If you happen to lose your water filter or your method of purification, your best bet is to filter your water through a bandana or some type of cloth to get like big particles out, and then boil that. As far as food goes, I won't tell you what to eat in this video, but I will tell you what not to eat. You really just want to avoid foods that will spoil quickly, like lunch meat or produce, for example. I've found that summer sausage tends to hold up really well without refrigeration, but I've actually gotten pretty sick on trail from eating lunch meat salami. Just had some diarrhea again. So if you need to eat meat out on trail, stay away from lunch meat, and I would stick with summer sausage, packaged tuna or salmon, jerky, or freeze-dried meat. If you find that something you ate or drank has made you sick, you would probably be experiencing nausea, diarrhea, and possibly vomiting. That might not seem like a big deal when you're in the comfort of your home, but out in the wilderness, diarrhea can quickly dehydrate you, which can become a life-threatening situation really quick. When I thru-hike, I carry loperamide, an anti-diarrheal, in my first aid kit, just in case I get serious diarrhea out on trail. As with any medicine, check with your doctor before bringing it and using it. I wouldn't take loperamide unless I was at major risk of dehydration from diarrhea, because its effects can last a long time in extreme cases. For example, when I was a medic and I was deployed to Iraq in the army, one of my soldiers came to me because he had really bad diarrhea and he was desperate for it to stop so he could perform his job effectively. I gave him a standard dose of loperamide by the book, and it cured his diarrhea. But the problem was, he was so sensitive to that medicine that he became so constipated from the medicine that he couldn't take a proper poo for over a week. Now, it's rare to become that constipated from a standard dose of an anti-diarrheal, but it's a perfect example of how important it is to use caution when taking any type of medicine out in the wilderness. I'm curious to know what you would like to see me create a video about. So please don't be shy, write it in the comments, I'll write back. I just really want to know what you want to see so I can give it to you. Now make sure you don't lose me in the vast, giant abyss of the internet by clicking subscribe and hitting that notification bell so you can actually see when I post my upcoming videos. Until next time, check out the other videos on my channel and let me know what you think.